Belial, the terrifying murderous Siamese twin in Basket Case Trilogy, explored. Many viewers didn't like the Basket Case when they watched it for the first time, but then they rewatched it and liked it, and eventually ended up loving it. Writer-director Frank Henenlotter himself admitted that he had not been earnest about the film, and he was probably surprised that the film had become a cult classic and remained in the hearts of the horror fans forever. The first trilogy, titled The Basket Case, was written and directed by Henenlotter in 1982. The film centered on Duane Bradley, played by Kevin Van Hentenryck, as he arrived in New York City with a basket containing his conjoined twin Belial, who was forcefully separated from him by an operation. Their motive to visit New York was to avenge the doctors who had operated upon them illegally. There are two more movies in the trilogy, namely Basket Case 2 in 1990 and Basket Case The Progeny, released in 1997. Would you believe the budget of The Basket Case was only $35,000 and the film crew consisted of only 4 to 5 people? Most of the names shown at the ending credits were literally fake names. Despite the low budget or the minimum crew, the film left a high impact on the viewers. Basket Case is one of those rare horror films which puts you through so many emotions that you just can't take the movie out of your mind right away. The advancement in SFX got better with each movie. In the original film, Belial appeared as a stop-motion animation of a puppet. But with technology at their fingertips, special effects with Belial were incredibly advanced. Let us now experience the different emotions connected with the trilogy.
Before we go into our list, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click from you, but it means a lot to us. Thank you. Let's begin.
Origin of Belial in Basket Case, released in 1982. Before exploring the movie, let us learn about the origin of Belial. Belial and Duane were conjoined twins in Glen Falls, whose mother died as soon as they were born. Belial, having a deformed head with a pair of hands, was attached to the right side of Duane. Belial's appearance was so disgusting and monstrous that a social worker screamed with horror at their sight. Imagine Belial's feelings, who had all the emotions of a human but not a body. Even their own father despised them, especially Belial, who was just a thing or a monster for his father. The only person who loved them was their aunt, who looked after them like their own mother. The two brothers not only shared flesh and tissues, but they were also connected telepathically, as they always could feel each other's emotions. They grew up to be teenagers, psychologically connected, but their father's hatred increased day by day as he kept consulting doctors regularly to operate and separate the twins. Finally, the three doctors, Dr. Lieflander, Dr. Needleman, and Dr. Cutter, agreed to do the operation. Imagine the plight of Belial when his father is ready to sacrifice his life and let Duane have a chance at a normal life. Duane and Belial were connected through tissues, flesh and cartilages, and luckily they didn't share any organ. The brothers screamed and protested very hard, but no one cared for their love, psychic connection, or Belial's life. The doctors performed the operation and ruthlessly removed Belial from Duane's body and threw him in a garbage in a plastic bag. After regaining consciousness, Duane ran in despair to look for Belial and, to his surprise, found Belial to be alive in the plastic bag. From that moment, Belial swore vengeance towards the world, especially those who wanted to kill him. Their first target was their father, who was cut into halves. Their aunt was very sympathetic and looked after them till her death. Their next target was Dr. Lieflander, who was brutally killed by Belial in the opening scene of the film. After killing him, Belial retrieved some documents containing the details of the remaining two doctors, and eventually Duane arrived in New York with Belial hidden in a basket. He lodged in a cheap hotel named Hotel Broslin, costing him $20 per night. Duane was very caring about Belial and probably suffered from some guilt as he was able to enjoy a normal life, but Belial was not. In the hotel, Duane met Casey, a a friendly woman who warned him about another guest, Brian O'Donovan, who was too intrigued by Duane from the moment he realized that Duane carried a load of cash. The next day, Duane arrived at the clinic of Dr. Needleman, where he befriended the receptionist Sharon, played by Terry Susan Smith, and succeeded in booking an urgent appointment with the doctor and also fixed a date with Sharon. Duane showed his scars to Dr. Needleman, which reminded him of their operation in Glen Falls. As his calls for Dr. Leaflander went unanswered, he called Dr. Cutter, who advised him to deny any knowledge of Dr. Leaflander or Glen Falls. Duane went to a movie hall to spend some time till Dr. Needleman would be free and dozed off. Later, Duane took Belial to Dr. Needleman's chamber, left him to ambush the doctor, and took along his address book to locate Dr. Cutter. Meanwhile, Duane bought a television to keep Belial distracted while enjoying his date with Sharon. But as soon as Duane kissed Sharon, Belial understood everything through their psychic connection. His insecurity and jealousy enraged him to such a level that he started vandalizing the room. All the guests ran to the room, but Belial again hid inside the basket before they arrived. After the guests returned, Brian opened the room and entered to steal Duane's money, but he was attacked by Belial and murdered viciously. Duane was deeply disturbed by the emotional outburst of Belial, which he felt with his telepathic connection, and hurried back to the hotel. The police interrogated him once he reached the hotel, but nothing could be found to suspect Duane. After this incident, Duane took Belial in the basket and went to a bar where he got drunk with Casey and spilled his entire life stories to her, though she didn't believe him. At night, at Casey's room, Belial started caressing her, but she woke up and, on seeing Belial, started screaming loudly. Amidst the commotion, Belial stole Casey's panty and took it with him in the basket. From this one scene, we can understand so many things. Firstly, Belial was jealous of his brother and, like his brother, wanted to get close to a girl. His frustration of having the urge to be intimate with the opposite sex, but his physical inability to fulfill his desire, resulted in such an action. Hence, stealing Casey's panty was his way of getting close to a girl, something he would never be able to achieve in his life. Many people might find this scene hilarious, but, on a personal note, this scene generated the unhappiness and misery of a person who is being punished by the world for no fault of his own. All Belial wanted was love and attention from the world, but all he received was rejection and hatred. The next day, Belial and Duane visited Dr. Cutter and murdered her mercilessly. Back at the hotel, Sharon visited Duane, and as they started to make out, Belial again became incredibly agitated, and the situation got out of control while both Sharon and Belial were screaming loudly. After Duane forced Sharon out of the room for the first time, he felt frustrated for not having a normal life and felt burdened with the responsibility of his deformed twin. That night, Belial wanted to kill Duane, but his love for Duane overpowered his momentary hatred, and so instead he went to Sharon's house and at first molested her. But with only his head, torso and hand, there was no way he could satisfy his burning desire, and with this frustration, he killed Sharon. Duane reached there and took back Belial in the hotel, where they fought like mad dogs. They both fell out of the window and were seen hanging from the edge. This time, he is not alone. Basket Case 2 released in 1990. Basket Case 2 picked up exactly where it had left in the prequel. Duane and Belial were severely injured from a massive fall from the window of Hotel Broslin and were taken to the hospital. But the media covered their entire story, and they were suspects of all the gruesome murders they had performed. Duane and Belial got together in the hospital and killed the police officer posted outside their door. Then they tried to get away from the hospital as the police and hospital staff were busy confronting a journalist, trying to bribe the police officer for a 5-minute interview with the two brothers. As they stepped outside the hospital, two ladies approached them in their van and introduced themselves as their distant Aunt Granny Ruth and her granddaughter Susan, who had come to help them. They took the siblings to their mansion, where Belial was introduced to a community of deformed people like him, especially Eve, who was very much similar to Belial. Meanwhile, Lou, an editor who thought that any news of the Bradley brothers would be good publicity for their paper, engaged the reporter Marcy Elliott to find out about the brothers. Marcy started calling people who were known to be dealing with monsters for their opinions and decided to check with Ruth, famous as Dr. Freak. Back in the mansion, Ruth acted as a psychotherapist for Belial and talked about his separation from his brother. Ruth figured out that being separated, Belial not only lost his brother, but he lost a part of himself. Attachment with his brother made him feel like a whole person. He missed and needed his brother's body, but he hated him at the same time. Ruth consoled him and told him that ripping off faces all the time should not be his only interest. Meanwhile, Duane, who had started liking Susan, was also relieved that Belial was happy in his own community and was not dependent on Duane anymore. He wanted to create a life with Susan, but she was not interested and loved the bizarre community. Duane spoke with Belial too, stating his intentions to start a new life as Belial had found his partner, Eve. As Duane talked to Belial, Marcy visited Ruth for her opinion on the Bradley brothers, but Ruth stated that she despised Marcy and her magazine as they had constantly interfered in her life and the deformed people she tried to help, shattering their privacy and respect that they deserved. As Marcy was about to leave, Duane entered with Belial in the basket. Though Ruth introduced him as her neighbor, Michael, Marcy immediately recognized them. At night, Marcy returned to Ruth's mansion, and her photographer quietly entered the house, but the deformed community was prepared for confrontation and murdered him savagely. The entire murder scene shot in the flickering spotlight of the camera rendered a pretty gruesome effect. Marcy was able to figure out from the shadows that the photographer was killed and instantly contacted her detective friend Phil. Phil called up Ruth's house and forced Duane to meet in a bar. All the monsters surrounded Phil at the bar, and as he was about to escape, Belial ambushed him, slaughtering him mercilessly. From Phil's wallet, they found out Marcy's address, and soon all of them invaded Marcy's house. Belial pounced on Marcy but didn't kill her, just converted her into another freak by disfiguring her face. Everyone sat down at the mansion for a celebration dinner while Duane proposed to Susan, and they started making out. But soon, Susan disclosed that she had been pregnant for the last 6 years, but the baby didn't want to come out of her womb. While she talked, a deformed, monstrous figure popped out of Susan's belly and disappeared inside again. Duane freaked out to such an extent that he pushed Susan and she accidentally fell from the window near the dining table and died. While everybody started looking for Duane, he took Belial and sewed him back to his body again as everybody stared in despair. They were back together again. Basket Case 2 was also written and directed by Frank Henenlotter in 1990 with an increased budget this time, reflecting all over the film. Kevin Van Hentenryck looked really cute in this film with a clean haircut and a mature look. Annie Ross as Granny Ruth was so perfect with her performance that she never had to be directed. Catherine Measley as Marcy Elliott and Heather Rattray as Susan were pretty good with their roles. The deformed, freaky people appeared hilarious and cartoonish, rather than horrific, but that's the way the director wanted it. The borderline between horror and comedy in this film is so thin that it makes the viewer confused many times, which is bound to make you agree with Los Angeles Times, which wrote, "It has everything it needs to become the cult film. Outrageous dark humor, bizarre horror, and genuine pathos." Henenlotter was not interested in making any sequel of Basket Case for many years. Once, he was trying to sell a script for a movie called Insect City to his friend James Gillikenhorse. He liked the script, but knew that it wouldn't sell. When Gillikenhouse asked him if he had any more ideas, Henenlotter replied, "Well, there's always the sequel to Basket Case." It's time for a bigger basket, Basket Case 3, The Progeny, released in 1991. Basket Case 3, The Progeny, commenced with some flashbacks from the prequel, while Duane and Belial were re-separated and Duane was stuck in a straitjacket and imprisoned in the basement of Granny Ruth's mansion. After a few months, Ruth organized a road trip to visit her ex-husband, Dr. Hal Rockwell, who would help deliver the babies of Belial and Eve, as Eve's pregnancy was complicated. Duane desperately wanted to say sorry to Belial and make things normal, but Belial, still upset, refused to communicate with Duane. Ruth consoled Duane, stating that time would heal all pains and things would be normal again. On their way, Ruth stopped at a drugstore. But the bus was parked in the wrong way. The sheriff burst into the store, but the sweet talk of Ruth calmed the sheriff, and he even carried her baggage. Meanwhile, Duane tried to sneak out of the window of the bus, but was stuck in between. A young girl named Opal was passing by and wanted to help him and introduced herself as the sheriff's daughter. But as soon as Ruth returned, Duane went back inside the bus. As soon as the bus reached Peach Valley and Dr. Hal examined Eve, her water had broken and the bus was flooded. Eve was taken inside as Dr. Hal prepared for her delivery. Meanwhile, Duane requested Ruth to release him from the straitjacket, but as soon as Ruth left the room, Duane escaped from the mansion. Belial was taken out of the basket to accompany Eve for the delivery. But as soon as Belial saw Dr. Hal, he was reminded of the past and immediately attacked the doctor. Junior Hal and Ruth helped Eve deliver 12 babies. Duane went and met Opal, who tricked him and put him behind bars. Opal found the criminal record of Duane, but when the two policemen, Bailey and Baxter, found about $1 million reward on the Bradley brothers, they asked Opal to wait for her father and headed for the Hal mansion to arrest Belial. At the Hal mansion, when they saw the horde of deformed men partying, they were taken aback. But for the sake of the reward, they sneaked through the window of the room where Eve and the 12 babies were resting. The policemen killed Eve, mistaking her for Belial, and kidnapped the 12 babies with them. The sheriff broke into the Hal mansion only to find everyone mourning the death of Eve, and he freaked out at the sight of the monsters as well as young Hal, who was also deformed. In the meantime, Belial had reached the police station and created a massacre by killing everyone. Opal quickly released Duane so that he could stop Belial, but Opal was accidentally killed too, who also crushed one of Belial's children as she fell. As the sheriff arrived and attacked, Duane escaped with Belial in the basket, but the sheriff's shot injured Belial. As Belial recovered from his injuries, Junior Hal built a robotic exoskeleton for him for the final encounter. Ruth and her community reached the police station, but the sheriff made a deal with her to hand over Belial in exchange for the infants. As the sheriff arrived at the abandoned factory as per the deal, Belial and the sheriff fought hard, and Belial almost ambushed the sheriff, but soon the sheriff attacked again and tripped Belial. Finally, it was Belial's babies who attacked the sheriff together and killed him. In the end, Granny Ruth and her group of freaks took over a talk show and told the world that the freaks would no longer hide from the world and they would fight back against any oppression. She wished everyone a nice day and concluded her speech. Can you believe the entire film was shot in 27 days? The third and final sequel was also written and directed by Henenlotter in 1991, while Hentenryck and Annie Ross were back as Duane and Ruth. Henenlotter was not very happy with the movie, but Hentenryck did a commendable job as Duane, who doesn't realize his craziness. There is no proper storyline to support the film as its prequels, and the writer-director admits it too. Many of the critics admitted that it might not have been one of the best films of Henenlotter, but watching the movie was a lot of fun. A lot of horror effects were diminished to make the film less gory. Most of the freak costumes were taken from the prequel, while a few new ones were added for the new film. The prosthetic makeups of the freaks were quite elaborate, and one of the actors even fainted with suffocation in the heat. There are some violent bloodshed and nudity to accompany the humour and horror, but yet the film offers entertainment to a great extent. Future of the Basket Case franchise. Frank Henenlotter was extremely happy with the Basket Case Blu-ray release from Image Entertainment and Something Weird Video in 2011, as his masterpiece would be available in high-def splendor. He was not happy with the sloppy look of the original print. Henenlotter also had revealed that he had been approached for a remake of the original Basket Case, but he wanted to make sure that one of his favorite movies should be redirected by the absolute right person. Henenlotter also stated that he had plans for Basket Case 4, but he was not sure about the storyline of the sequel, whether it should follow the original story as it had done with the trilogy or change the story completely. Till now, there are no indications of a remake or sequel. The horror fans are still waiting to see a new basket so that they can eagerly ask again, what's in the basket?
This is all the time we had for today's episode. We hope you guys liked it. It would be awesome if you guys can take some time to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to tell us which topic you want us to cover in the comment section. Have a fantastic day ahead and stay safe.